After we saw the perspective of traditional medical establishment, let's talk about the real perspective about your diabetes. So, what's the actual truth about your type 2 diabetes? And I want to start with a simple perspective that will allow you to better understand what's at stake here and why diabetes happened actually, and why it's such a epidemic, so to speak, in our society. When it comes to health, things make sense, or rather said, things make most sense from an anthropological standpoint. What do I mean by this? I mean that um, from an anthropological standpoint, we should look at how we evolved to being human, right? So our genes, our bodies aren't too different from how they were 10,000 years ago. And why did I choose this number, 10,000 years? It's because roughly 10,000 years ago, a very important event happened in the history of mankind. And that event is agriculture. The, the spread and more frequent use of agriculture. Anthropological studies have shown that since this radical change happened in most societies, in most human societies, our health started to decline significantly. So the question is, how did our ancestors live more than 10,000 years ago before this agricultural revolution that changed everything? Let's imagine for a bit the life of a caveman. Okay, um, imagine that you you had to hunt every day for your meal, right? Food was much scarcer than it is today. Obviously, it wasn't that scarce. Otherwise, we wouldn't have lived until modern times. But what's clear is that we had to work pretty hard for our food. We had to hunt, we had to forage, we had to search for plants. We had to invest a lot of effort into finding food. And this answers two important questions. Number one is that we had a much lower calorie intake in the past. So I must remind you that our genes are pretty much the same as 12,000, 15,000 years ago, right? So our calorie intake was much lower. It was exclusively from natural foods, which were much more natural than our current modern day natural, because our modern natural presumes that it's raised with the aid of pesticides and all that stuff. Even though organic food isn't as organic as we think it is. So yeah, food was much more nutritionally rich than in nowadays. Uh, and second, they moved a lot. All right, so I won't say that they exercised, because surely they didn't exercise for fun, because they moved so much day by day just to get their food, that they probably didn't even think of exercising for the sake of exercise, right? So um, it's like two birds with one shot, right? So we ate a lot less, and we ate only natural foods, very rich in vitamins and minerals and all the goodies, so to speak, and they moved a lot, right? When it comes to sleep, they were ancient hunter gatherers, and ancient cavemen lived in small groups. Science doesn't agree on the sleep habits. However, what's clear is that they didn't have artificial lighting, which clearly forced them to sleep more during the night rather than in the day, like some of us do, like most people. I mean, most people go to sleep at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and get up at 6, maybe 7, which I think this is even a good example. I mean, I know many people who don't even do this. So, anyways, their sleep habits were much more in accordance with nature. All right. Um, what about stress? Well, they were stressed. We can't create an idealized image, right? That, oh, in the past everything was so much better. It's not the case, right? Let's be realistic here. They were stressed. They were stressed because maybe they got attacks from other tribes. Maybe they were attacked by a tiger. Maybe they were attacked by a bear, and so on. But the big difference is that they had to endure acute stress attacks rather than chronic stress attacks. So they had to face an immediate threat, and once they escaped it, they could shake it off, and they it wouldn't affect them anymore. While in our life we live in a constant psychological stress state because of numerous responsibilities and worries, like our jobs, our financial situation, our relationships, and so on. Not to mention the more biological stress, like lack of exercise, faulty nutrition, lack of sleep, and so on. All right. So, and when I just tackled four of these lifestyle habits, right? There are many more, like exposure to sunshine. They lived in tight groups, so their social bonds was much more um, close. They didn't they weren't forced to live for a living, so to speak, but they had to hunt for their food. But the point is this: if we compared their habits, like 12,000, 15,000 years ago, with our modern habits, we could notice some major differences, right? And uh, it might lead you to see a connection, right? And the connection is simple: that we have grown apart immensely from our natural lifestyle. Our natural lifestyle is an active one. It involves eating only nutritious wild food, rarely meat. We should work for it, and we should be in accord with nature's rhythms, not with society's rhythms, which include a hectic work schedule, artificial lightning, bright lights, radiations, and so on. So, when you think about it, and when you deeply analyze this perspective, like comparing our modern lifestyles with the anthropological perspective, you would see why it's actually intelligent to dismiss extreme paradigms, right? Like, oh, you should eat only a low fat diet, or only a low carb diet, or you should exercise more, and so on. In the greater context, what's important is that all of these um, habits and all of these components of the lifestyle should be aligned, right? Should be as close as possible to our natural lifestyle, which ultimately is dictated by our genes. Like, our genes need this. Our genes need to eat natural food rich in nutrients. Our genes need to have our bodies moving as much as possible, and so on. So, um, if you stop and think about it, you'll realize why there's an epidemic of diabetes in our society, why there's an epidemic of cancer, why there's an epidemic of heart disease, and so on. It makes sense, because we have grown apart from our natural lifestyle, from our natural habits that kept us healthy, active, and well.